The first bell began ringing before Eleanor Hartwell had both feet out of the hired chaise. It sounded from somewhere beneath the eastern court. A frantic iron clamour, swallowed and thrown back by rain. And no one on the broad steps of Ravensmere Hall seemed to know what it meant. A footman ran toward the stable arch. A maid ran in the opposite direction. Two men, in dark livery, stood under the portico, arguing over whether the bell belonged to the laundry or the lower pantry. Behind them, rain struck the grey stone house in sheets and poured from a broken gutter as steadily as water from a pump. Eleanor looked once at the windows, once at the slope of the paved court, and once at the brown water pushing up through the grating beside the kitchen stair. Then she left her trunk in the chaise and ran toward the bell. Where does that stair lead? The younger footman stared at her soaked bonnet. Below stairs. Miss, I can see that. Which rooms? The laundry passage, the coal room, and the old water chamber. But the door has swollen shut. A woman's cry rose under the ringing. The sound was thin, frightened, and unmistakably close. Eleanor pulled off her gloves. Bring an axe, 2 stable ropes, and every man who can lift. You. Stop running and find the housekeeper. You. Show me the nearest overflow gate. No one moved. Eleanor stepped close enough that the younger footman could see she was not guessing. There is someone below you. Move. He moved. So did the others. The door at the bottom of the kitchen stair had bowed inward under the weight of floodwater. Each time the trapped woman struck it from the other side. A dark line opened around the frame and spat muddy water over the steps. Eleanor put her palm against the panel, felt the pressure, and turned to the groom with the axe. Not the lock. Break the lower hinge. If you split the center now, the water will throw the door into whoever is behind it. Who the devil are you? Demanded a voice from the top of the stair. The men looked up. Eleanor did not. Rope around the newel, she said. 2 turns. Give me the loose end. The man above came down 3 steps. He was tall, bare-headed, and dressed in a dark riding coat, silvered by rain. His face had the severe symmetry painters gave to saints before they remembered that saints were meant to be merciful. A pale scar crossed one temple and disappeared into black hair. He looked at the ropes, the men, the bowed door, and finally, at Eleanor. I asked who you were. Eleanor Hartwell. Lady Augusta sent for me. She tied the rope around her waist. If you are master of this house, your grace, order that man to break the lower hinge. The Duke of Wexford had been obeyed by ministers, magistrates, tenants, officers, and every servant born within sight of Ravensmere's chimneys. For one astonished second, he appeared unable to understand the shape of a command travelling toward him instead. The cry came again from behind the door. Do it, he said. The axe struck iron. Once, twice. On the third blow, the hinge tore free, and the bottom of the door kicked toward them. Water burst through the gap. Eleanor braced both feet on the step, held the rope, and shouted for the trapped woman to move away from the panel. The second hinge gave. 4 men hauled while the flood fought them. A small face appeared in the black water, white with terror. The laundry maid had climbed onto a stone sorting table and was clinging to a bell wire. Behind her, a loose cupboard drifted against the wall. Eleanor went through the opening before anyone could forbid it. The water reached her hips and struck hard enough to turn her sideways. She caught the rope with both hands, found the next step with her boot, and waded to the table. What is your name? Bess. Miss Bess. I am going to put this rope around you. You are going to hold my shoulders, not my neck. and the men outside will take both of us up. Do you understand?" The girl nodded. Shaking so violently that her teeth knocked together, Eleanor secured the rope, pressed Bess's fingers into place, and called to the men. The line tightened. Water dragged at their skirts. The drifting cupboard struck Eleanor's knee, and for an instant the bell wire wound around her wrist. She tore free. Then the men pulled them through the broken doorway and up into the kitchen passage. Bess collapsed against the housekeeper. Eleanor stayed on her knees only long enough to be certain the girl was breathing. "The water is still rising," she said. "Where is the old drainage plan?" The Duke looked down at her. "In the estate office." "Locked." "Naturally." "Then we require the key unnaturally fast." The faintest change passed over the butler's lined face. It might have been alarm. It might have been amusement. The Duke took a ring from his pocket, turned, and strode through the service passage. Eleanor followed in her soaked travelling dress, leaving a trail across black and white marble. The estate office stood beyond the great hall. On its wall hung a framed survey of Ravensmere, made when the Eastern Court had been rebuilt 60 years before. Eleanor found the blue line of the buried channel, traced it under the laundry, and stopped at a square marked Winter Sluice. "Where is this?" "Behind the icehouse," said the butler. "It has been closed. Open it, and the lower passage will empty into the old mill race. That race has been dry for 20 years. The Duke said, "Water does not care how long a gentleman has neglected a ditch." He looked at her, hard. Then he looked at Bess, shivering in the housekeeper's arms, and ordered 6 men to the icehouse. Within half an hour the winter sluice was open. Muddy water rushed out beneath the orchard wall and foamed down the abandoned race. The level in the laundry passage fell a hand's breadth, then another. The bell stopped only when a footman climbed onto the sorting table and cut the wire Bess had used to save herself. Eleanor stood in the Eastern Court, with rain dripping from her hair, and watched the brown torrent escape. Her left knee hurt. Her travelling gown was beyond saving. Her trunk still sat in the hired chaise, and the driver had covered it with a horse blanket as an act of private charity. The Duke came out with his butler. Up close, Nathaniel Ashcombe, 7th, Duke of Wexford, looked less like a saint and more like a man who had forgotten the use of sleep. His eyes were a dark, clear green. His expression suggested he had found the whole morning personally offensive. "Lady Augusta engaged you to put my household papers in order," he said. "She engaged me to put your household in order." "Your Grace, the papers are only where disorder confesses. You broke a door within 12 minutes of arriving. I believe the flood broke it. I merely chose the safest hinge." The butler lowered his gaze. "Mr. Ellison will show you to a room," the Duke said. "Mrs. Greaves will find you dry clothing. We will discuss the exact limits of your employment when you no longer resemble a survivor of the deluge." Eleanor bent to retrieve one muddy glove. "I should like the discussion before dinner." The eastern channel was not blocked by storm debris. Someone wedged the sluice shut. His face changed, not into surprise but refusal. "You have been here less than an hour. Water is often quicker than introductions." She curtsied and followed Mrs. Greaves inside. After a moment, Nathaniel followed with Ellison. Eleanor's muddy footprints crossed the black and white marble hall toward the servants' stair. Through a tall, rain-streaked window, the reopened mill race raced past the east wing. Nathaniel watched Eleanor disappear upstairs. She was not beautiful in the practiced London fashion. Her brown hair had escaped every pin, and her straight brows gave her face an expression of permanent inquiry. Yet she had entered a flooded passage when 3 men had stood above it discussing keys. That fact sat in his mind with irritating weight. "Lady Augusta has sent me a calamity in a brown gown." he said. Ellison watched Eleanor disappear at the turn of the servant's stare. Lady Augusta has occasionally been known to send remedies in discouraging bottles. Your Grace, she will not last 30 days here. No, Your Grace. That sounded like disagreement. I have served dukes long enough to know that agreement should be offered carefully. Nathaniel turned toward the framed drainage survey on the hall wall. Beyond the window, the reopened mill race roared louder than the rain. Eleanor heard the prediction before the day ended. Bess told the second laundry maid, who told a kitchen boy, who told the underfootman, who repeated it while carrying coal past the small room Mrs. Greaves had given Eleanor above the still room. By dinner, every servant at Ravensmere knew that the new household secretary had 30 days. Eleanor considered the matter while she rubbed warmth back into her bruised knee. She did not blame the Duke. She had failed to last 30 days in 2 previous houses, although in both cases the house had technically failed to last her. At Cheriton Lodge, the master dismissed her for calculating that his new French cook cost more than his 3 dairymaids and produced less edible food. At Bellamy House, the mistress called her insolent after Eleanor suggested that locking 6 servants in an attic did not prevent fever from travelling down a staircase. Lady Augusta Ashcombe had heard both stories and laughed until tears entered her formidable blue eyes. My nephew's house is not wicked, she had said. It is merely stopped. Nathaniel thinks attention is the same as command, and command is the same as order. Ravensmere has 11 bells, 43 indoor servants, 180 tenants, 3 miles of old water channels, and a master who insists that no hinge be purchased without his signature. Go there. Make him understand the difference. Eleanor had accepted because Lady Augusta offered a salary large enough to keep Eleanor and her widowed aunt through winter. She had accepted because the name Ravensmere had lived in her mind for 4 years. Most of all, she had accepted because Thomas's last letter had come from that estate. Her brother had written of water under stone, of a survey that did not agree with the ground, and of men who preferred a convenient conclusion to an honest measurement. 3 days later, a blast in the north mine killed Thomas and 10 local men. The official report blamed Thomas's experimental drainage pump. Their father died believing his son had caused the disaster. Eleanor had never believed it. She had told Lady Augusta that Thomas served as an engineer. She had not said where he died. Hartwell was a common enough name, and 4 years altered recollection. Eleanor came to Ravensmere, intending to perform the work for which she was paid. If the house offered her an answer besides, she would not refuse it. At 6 o'clock, dry in a plain dark blue gown borrowed from Mrs. Greaves's niece, Eleanor entered the Duke's morning room with a notebook and found him standing before the fire. Mr. Ellison waited near the door. Mrs. Greaves, a broad woman with iron-grey hair and the exhausted dignity of a general denied reinforcements, sat upright on a hard chair. Nathaniel did not invite Eleanor to sit. My aunt's letter describes you as a household secretary. It is a phrase she invented to avoid alarming you with the word reform. You begin badly. I began in the laundry. Your Grace, this is an improvement. Mrs. Greaves coughed into her hand. Mr. Ellison studied the ceiling. Nathaniel moved a stack of papers across the desk. Ravensmere has a housekeeper, a butler, a steward, and an estate surveyor. It does not require a 4th authority. It has 4 authorities already. That is why no one opened the sluice. He went still. Eleanor laid her notebook on the desk and opened it. Bess pulled the laundry bell for 9 minutes. The board in the servants' hall labels that wire East Pantry. The under-footman believed it belonged to the coal cellar. Mrs. Greaves sent 3 requests to have the board corrected. All 3 await your signature. The winter sluice was wedged shut with a length of new oak. Mrs. Greaves reported water gathering below the laundry after the last storm. The surveyor's clerk said the channel was obsolete. No one had authority to test it. Your household did not fail from want of servants. It failed because every useful decision traveled to this desk and died beneath other useful decisions. Nathaniel's gaze fell to the papers. A corner of one request showed under a report about stable tiles. What do you propose? 30 days. You know what I said. The coal boy knows what you said. I imagine the poultry maid will know by breakfast. Let us make the prediction, a contract. For the first time, interest sharpened his expression. Name your terms. Mrs. Greaves remains housekeeper and Mr. Ellison remains butler. I will not take their offices. I coordinate what crosses between them. For 30 days. Safety repairs under £5 proceed without your signature. The responsible senior servant records the expense and reason. Any servant may report danger without going through the person accused of neglecting it. The bell board is corrected tomorrow. We hold a 10-minute standing meeting each morning. No speeches. And if your system produces waste, you may dismiss me on the 30th day and publish my failure to every duchess in England. I require no permission to dismiss you. No, but I require enough authority to fail honestly. Mrs. Greaves's tired eyes lifted. Mr. Ellison's mouth changed at one corner. Nathaniel walked to the window. Rain shone on the eastern court. He had inherited Ravensmere 18 months before, and had spent each of those months discovering another consequence of his father's confidence. Unpaid bonds. Rotten mine supports. Leases promised twice. Tenants who bowed to him and watched him with the careful eyes of men, measuring whether a new master was merely an old mistake in a younger coat. He had answered by signing nothing quickly. Then nothing moved at all. £4, he said. Not 5. £4.10. 4. And emergency authority when delay threatens life. Fire. Or flood. Judged by whom? By the person standing nearest the danger. His eyes returned to her. That is an alarming principle. Only to people standing far away. Silence held for a moment. 30 days. He said. Mr. Ellison. Write the authority. Mrs. Greaves. Inform the upper servants. Miss Hartwell. If you enter another flooded room, you will at least wait for the rope to be secured before you do it. Eleanor closed her notebook. That seems a sensible first rule. Ravensmere did not yield itself to her in a week. It resisted in 1,000 small habits, each defended by someone who had forgotten why it began. The breakfast eggs reached the dining room cold because the east stair had been closed after plaster fell from its ceiling. The footman carried dishes around the long gallery instead, adding 4 minutes to every journey. The plaster had been repaired in February. No one had reopened the stair because the Duke's written order specified closure and no second order specified use. The nursery received coal by way of the front hall because a store closet had been assigned to decorative screens no one had unfolded since the old Duke's funeral. 3 kitchen maids began work before dawn and shared 1/2 day of rest every 14 days because the rota belonged to a former cook who had been dead for 7 years. The bells were worse. Some rang where their labels claimed. Some rang 2 rooms away. The blue salon bell shook a wire in the boot room. The old schoolroom bell did nothing at all. One wire produced a faint trembling in the wall behind the Duke's study and caused him to look suspiciously at the books. Eleanor spent her second morning beneath the servants' hall board with Jem, the smallest footman, pulling one cord at a time while Bess called from the rooms above. They wrote each true destination on a strip of card and fitted it under the proper brass flag. Miss Hartwell. Jem said when they reached the last. Does this mean we must answer all of them now? It means you will know which one you are failing to answer. Bess laughed. It was the first time Eleanor had heard her laugh since the flood. At the morning meeting, Eleanor stood beside a slate, propped on a sideboard. Mrs. Greaves listed work requiring hands. Mr. Ellison listed rooms requiring service. Cook listed provisions going to waste. Head groom listed carts travelling empty to the village. In 10 minutes, Eleanor found that the empty cart could return with flour. The maid sent to fetch lamp oil could carry Mrs. Greaves's letters. And 2 footmen polishing unused silver could move coal before rain. Nathaniel attended on the 3rd day from the doorway. You have placed my house on a slate, he said. Only the portion that must occur before luncheon. My father conducted household matters through written memoranda. Your father had 3 secretaries and frightened everyone into moving before the ink dried. Mrs. Greaves dropped her pencil. Nathaniel's expression chilled. You did not know my father. No. I know the memoranda. There are 17 concerning pantry candles, and none concerning the cracked cistern wall. He left without answering. That afternoon, however, a mason arrived to examine the wall. Eleanor did not attempt to charm the servants. She asked what prevented them from doing their work, and believed the first answer often enough that they risked giving her a second. She moved the screens out of the coal closet. She arranged a true half-day of rest for each kitchen maid, and filled the gap by shifting 2 housemaids during the quiet hours after breakfast. She had the east stair opened, inspected, swept, and used. The eggs reached the Duke hot. On the 7th morning, he looked at the covered dish as though it contained a political message. Mrs. Greaves tells me this is your doing. The hen deserves some credit. He broke the egg and found the yolk soft. My aunt warned me, you answer serious questions lightly. Only when the serious answer has already been acted upon. He should have disliked her. Instead, against discipline. He almost smiled. The house noticed. It noticed other things as well. Fires were laid where people sat, rather than where tradition required rooms to be warmed. Torn sheets became servants' bandages. But sound linen no longer vanished into locked presses. Cook received a weekly number of diners by Thursday and stopped preparing supper for guests who had left on Monday. The dairymaid sent cracked cream to the kitchen before it spoiled. The boot boy acquired a stool and no longer polished shoes kneeling on stone. None of it was grand. That was the point. Eleanor had learned in field hospitals that disaster loved impressive men and neglected corners. A surgeon might perform a brilliant amputation, while a dirty bucket killed 3 patients in the night. A duke might negotiate a county loan, while wet coal. Mislabeled bells. And one frightened maid brought his household to a halt. She kept a narrow red book of completed actions. Not promises. When a task was finished, the person responsible marked it with a cross. No one signed excuses. Nathaniel found the book on the sideboard after a week. This contains no names. It records work, not guilt. How do you know who failed? Usually the person explaining another person's failure tells me. He turned a page. East stair reopened. Bellboard corrected. Winter sluice cleared. Kitchen rota begun. Cistern inspection pending. You have not listed the cost. Mrs. Greaves keeps costs. Mr. Ellison keeps service. I keep movement. One book should answer one question well. And what question does yours answer? Is the house safer tonight than it was this morning? He closed the book. My books ask whether Ravensmere will remain mine next year. A house can belong to a man on paper, while failing everyone beneath its roof. The words struck harder than she intended. His scar whitened. You presume a great deal. Miss Hartwell, I observe a great deal. Presumption is what we call observation when it comes from someone without rank. He set the book down very carefully. Lady Augusta did not mention that you possessed claws. She probably assumed you would discover them. He walked away angry. Eleanor watched him cross the hall and told herself anger was useful when it moved. Silence was more dangerous. That evening, a folded note came to her room. The writing was spare and dark. The cistern mason may proceed. £4 and 12 shillings. Do not celebrate the excess. Eleanor wrote beneath it, I shall grieve for the 12 shillings in private, and sent it back. The Duke's sister arrived on the 10th day. Lady Clara Ashcombe was 21. Not the child Eleanor had expected from Lady Augusta's letters. She had spent the winter with cousins in Bath and returned with fashionable sleeves. 3 trunks, and a silence so complete that it altered every room she entered. 2 years earlier, Clara had been engaged to the eldest son of Sir Peregrine Voss. The young man died of a fever before the wedding. Society considered the tragedy romantic. Clara considered it an escape she was forbidden to admit. Sir Peregrine had responded by making himself indispensable to the Ashcombes. He advised Nathaniel on estate debt, spoke for Clara in company, and treated the uncompleted marriage as a bond between families. His surviving daughter, Lady Sabine, appeared at every dinner where someone might remark that Ravensmere required a duchess. Clara stepped down from her carriage, saw Eleanor directing 2 men away from a cracked arch, and said, You must be the woman who flooded the laundry. The rain flooded it. I have accepted responsibility for the more entertaining version. Clara's mouth twitched. My brother dislikes entertainment. Then he has chosen an inconvenient sister. Clara looked at her fully and, after a second, laughed. Nathaniel came through the hall at the sound. He stopped, as if a forgotten door had opened. Clara. His sister's laughter vanished. She offered her cheek. He kissed it. They spoke with careful affection and no ease. Eleanor saw the distance. And because the running of a house depended upon distances as much as supplies, she remembered it. Clara's rooms had been prepared in the south wing by a written order dated 6 weeks before. In those 6 weeks, a chimney jackdaw had built a nest. Rain had entered behind the west cornice, and the dressing room smelled of damp wool. The maid assigned to Clara had not reported it because the upper housemaid feared Mrs. Greaves would be blamed. And Mrs. Greaves had not inspected because she had spent 3 nights beside her ill sister in the village. Nathaniel ordered the rooms stripped and 3 servants dismissed. No, Eleanor said. The word entered the south corridor like a plate falling. Nathaniel turned. Clara stood behind him, still wearing her travelling cloak. The maid stared at the carpet. What did you say? Dismissal will teach every servant to hide the next defect more carefully. They concealed rooms unfit for my sister. They concealed blame. Repair the rooms. Then, repair the road by which bad news reaches you. This is not your decision. No, it is your consequence. Colour rose beneath his cheekbones. Clara spoke before he could answer. I prefer the old schoolroom. It has the morning sun. It has no dressing room. Nathaniel said, I possess a face. Nathaniel, it can be dressed near a window. Eleanor looked at Mrs. Greaves. Can the schoolroom be ready by night? It can. Miss. Then no one is dismissed today. Nathaniel's gaze moved from Eleanor to his sister, then to the frightened maids. He had the look of a man asked to step off solid ground. No one is dismissed today, he said at last, but I want the complete truth by morning. You shall have it, Eleanor said. They found the truth in less than an hour. Each servant had carried one piece, none daring to assemble them. The jackdaw, the cracked flashing, the ill sister, the uninspected room. Eleanor recorded repairs. Nathaniel listened. By night, Clara slept in the old schoolroom with sunlight-colored wallpaper and a fire that did not smoke. The next morning, Nathaniel stood beside Eleanor at the slate meeting. "A new rule," he said. "Every servant became still. A defect reported before it causes harm will not be punished. A defect hidden after it is known will be." Eleanor did not look at him until the meeting ended. "That was well done. Your approval is overwhelming. Do not fish for praise. Your grace, you might catch it." This time she saw the smile before he turned away. On the 12th day, the rain stopped. Ravensmere emerged beneath a pale sky, immense and severe, with 3 wings around a court and terraces descending toward a lake. Beyond the lake, wooded hills rose toward the abandoned North Mine. The mine chimneys stood black against the spring green. Eleanor had avoided looking at them. Avoidance became foolish under sunlight. She walked to the old mill race with a measuring cord and found water still moving through it. Although the eastern cellars were nearly dry, the race should have emptied. Instead, a clear stream entered from a stone culvert above the orchard and disappeared beneath a bank newly planted with thorn. She knelt to taste it, then stopped herself. The water carried a faint yellow cloud after rain and left a pale crust on the stones. Not household drainage. Spring water. I am told most ladies gather primroses on their walks. Nathaniel stood on the bank above her, riding gloves in one hand. Most dukes announce themselves before startling a woman beside deep water. If that is deep water, your standards are modest. A cup is deep enough to drown in when held over the mouth. His expression altered. "You speak like a field surgeon. My father supplied military hospitals. My brother was an engineer. Between them, I learned that water goes where it is allowed and death goes where it is ignored." Nathaniel looked toward the mine chimneys. "Your brother?" She kept her eyes on the culvert. "Thomas Hartwell." The silence gave her answer before he spoke. "Hartwell?" "Yes. He designed the north drainage pump. He inspected it. The distinction mattered to him." Nathaniel came down the bank slowly. "Why did my aunt send you here?" "Because your household required work." "Why did you accept?" "For the salary." "That is not the whole answer." "No." He waited. She wound the measuring cord around her palm. Thomas's final letter said the water survey at Ravensmere had been altered. He died before he could explain. "I did not come to accuse you, Your Grace. I came to work. I also came because I have spent 4 years wondering whether my brother's name was buried beneath another man's convenience." Nathaniel's face had closed with terrifying speed. "And you judged that entering my household without declaring this purpose was honorable. I judged that declaring it before I possessed evidence would be useless. You have searched my papers." "No." "My estate office. Only the framed drainage plan you unlocked while a maid was drowning. You have questioned servants about the mine. Not one." He turned away, then back. The report was conclusive. "Did you read it?" His jaw tightened. "Did you?" "I signed the final copy in Vienna. My father sent it with instructions that delay would injure the families waiting for compensation. There it was. Not guilt." "Exactly. A wound shaped like guilt and protected by authority. Then neither of us knows whether it was conclusive." Eleanor said, "I know 11 men died." "So do I." The water moved between them, clear over yellow stone. Nathaniel looked at the culvert. "This channel is not on the household survey. It enters above the winter sluice. Someone is sending spring water toward the house. Why? That is a better question than why I am gathering primroses. He did not smile. Yet he crouched beside the water, removed one glove, and pressed his fingers to the current. Cold, he said. Ground spring, not rain. The principal spring feeds the lake from the west. Then this water is being diverted. He stood. Fenwick surveyed every channel last autumn. Mr. Fenwick declared the winter sluice obsolete. He has served Ravensmere for 12 years. Oak served the sluice for at least 12 days. Loyalty is not evidence. Nathaniel stared at the pale crust. Say nothing of this yet. I will not agree to secrecy that risks another flood. Say nothing until I have looked. Look quickly. He met Herr Gaze. This was not obedience. And both knew it. It was the first agreement they made as two people responsible for the same danger. They spent the next 3 mornings tracing water. Nathaniel came without a groom and carried the estate map himself. Eleanor brought measuring cord, chalk, glass bottles, and bread wrapped in a cloth. They began before breakfast to avoid questions. The diverted stream crossed the orchard, ran beneath the dairy meadow, and entered a brick conduit near the old glass house. At each junction, new iron bolts shone against old stone. Eleanor recorded heights. Nathaniel held the staff and complained that she moved every time he believed it level. The ground moves, she said. The ground is the one party here with no motive to be difficult. You have not met Derbyshire clay. By the second morning, his boots were ruined, and his reserve had cracked in 3 places. He possessed a dry humour he seemed surprised to hear in his own voice. He knew the estate intimately above ground which tenant grew the best oats, where deer crossed at dusk, which wall had been built from priory stone. Below ground, he knew only the plans men placed before him. My father believed knowledge of detail diminished authority, he said, as they rested beside a hawthorn hedge. Did he also believe wet boots diminished a duke? He believed weather should recognize precedence. And did it? Never. It was a source of lasting bitterness. Eleanor smiled into her cup. Nathaniel watched her. Then looked away toward the lake. He was not an easy man. He said, "You need not defend the dead to me. Everyone defends the dead. They cannot do it themselves. That is precisely why the living are so often crushed beneath improved memories." He was quiet. You speak of your father, and you speak of yours. Neither apologized. At the far edge of the dairy meadow, the conduit disappeared beneath land, leased to Sir Peregrine Voss's canal company. Fresh survey stakes marked a line toward the river. Eleanor pulled one from the ground. It bore a black V cut into the wood. Voss says, a feeder canal will raise the value of every farm between here and Chesterfield. Nathaniel said, does he require your spring? He requires the West Meadow and water rights. Ravensmere requires his purchase money. How urgently? Urgently enough that I have endured 6 dinners with his daughter since Christmas. Eleanor set the stake down more sharply than necessary. Lady Sabine is part of the valuation. Sir Peregrine would call her an alliance. Clara calls her a hostage with excellent posture. And what do you call her? A kind woman born to an ambitious father. The answer relieved Eleanor, which annoyed her. Nathaniel studied the line of stakes. The agreement is to be signed at the Midsummer Assembly. Not before we know where this water goes. You overstep. Your Grace. We are standing over a concealed conduit that points from your spring toward a cellar that nearly killed a maid. If concern for your marriage market is the boundary of my office. Lady Augusta described the work poorly. My marriage is not at issue. Then we may both be relieved. His eyes held hers for one dangerous second. Sunlight warmed the wet meadow. A lark rose somewhere beyond the hedge. Nathaniel looked first away. By the 15th day, Ravensmere had begun to move differently. The change could be heard. Bells rang and were answered without 3 servants colliding in a corridor. The kitchen clock agreed with the hall clock. Doors no longer slammed because someone had found oil before hinges screamed. At 9 each morning, the upper servants stood around the slate and left, knowing what would happen before noon. Eleanor created no new office for herself. She occupied the spaces between old ones. Mrs. Greaves brought her disputes over labor. Mr. Ellison brought impossible requests from guests. Cook brought numbers. The head groom brought weather. Clara brought truths no one else wished to hear. Sir Peregrine is coming Thursday, Clara said, sitting on Eleanor's bed while Eleanor repaired the hem of her dark green gown. He will praise everything you have done and then explain why it proves Nathaniel requires his guidance. Does your brother require his money? Yes. Does he require his guidance? Nathaniel has confused the two for years. Clara picked up a pin and turned it between her fingers. Peregrine chose my husband before I was old enough to understand that silence may be mistaken for agreement. Charles was not cruel. That almost made it worse. Everyone expected me to be grateful. Were you? I was relieved when he died. The pin stopped. There. I have said the wicked thing. It sounds like a lonely thing. Clara's eyes filled. Nathaniel loved him. Nathaniel loved the man he knew. You feared the husband, only you would have known. Both may be true. You make truth sound untidy. It is. That is why people prefer rules. Clara laughed through her tears. She helped finish the hem. Badly, but with determination. Sir Peregrine arrived with Lady Sabine, Mr. Adrian Fenwick, and enough luggage for a siege. Peregrine was 60, silver-haired, smooth, and handsome in the manner of men who had spent a lifetime arranging light to flatter them. Fenwick, Ravensmere's surveyor, had a narrow mouth and boots too clean for his profession. Lady Sabine was not what Eleanor expected. She was 30, tall, dark-skinned, and composed, with intelligent black eyes that missed the patched plaster above the hall arch and the new labels on the bellboard. Her mother had been the daughter of a wealthy West Indian merchant. Society remembered the wealth when convenient and her ancestry when cruel. Sabine had learned to make observation look like serenity. Miss Hartwell, Sir Peregrine said, the famous lady with the slate. Wexford tells us you have saved him 12 shillings on eggs and cost him a door. The door was less useful than the laundry maid. Sir, a spirited answer. Nathaniel. She is exactly as Augusta described. Nathaniel's face went still. Eleanor understood at once that Peregrine's intimacy was a leash disguised as affection. Fenwick bowed. I am glad the eastern drains have finally proved adequate. They proved inadequate, Eleanor said. That is how we met. Old houses flood. Only when water enters them. His gaze sharpened. You are learned in hydraulics. I am learned in wet floors. Sabine looked at Eleanor. No smile appeared, but alliance flickered. At dinner, Peregrine spoke of the canal. He described prosperity flowing past Ravensmere's boundary in measured blue water. He praised Nathaniel for putting sentiment aside after the mine disaster. He called the West Meadow unproductive and the spring excessive. Water is never excessive, Eleanor said before discretion could catch her. Peregrine turned with indulgent surprise. In a drinking glass. Perhaps. In a household. And a village. A dairy. A garden. A fire. Or a dry summer. It is more useful than gold. And yet gold purchases pipes. Only if one has not sold the water that fills them. Nathaniel set down his wine. Miss Hartwell. The warning hurt more than it should. Sabine laid her hand beside her plate. Miss Hartwell is correct. Papa. The agreement grants the company priority in drought. I asked Mr. Fenwick whether that included household need. He said the language was customary. Peregrine's smile cooled. Legal instruments are not dinner conversation. Then perhaps they should not determine what everyone at the table will drink. Clara said. Nathaniel looked from his sister to Sabine. Then to Eleanor. The agreement will be reviewed before midsummer. Fenwick's fork made a soft sound against porcelain. After dinner? Nathaniel found Eleanor in the orangery, checking buckets beneath 3 roof leaks. You should not have challenged Peregrine at my table. Would the objection have improved in the passage? You speak without knowing the estate's position. Then tell me. Ravensmere owes £80,000. The mine produced 1/3 of its income. Closing it preserved lives and destroyed credit. Peregrine's purchase would pay the most urgent bonds and fund new tenant drains. By selling the spring that supplies those drains. You have not proved that. Neither has Mr. Fenwick proved otherwise. You make suspicion sound like virtue. I make examination sound necessary. He paced between orange trees. Evening light lay gold across his face, catching the scar at his temple. You believe I signed the mine report without reading, and now mean to sign away my water with equal care. I believe you are afraid that delay will make you resemble your father. So you call haste decision. He stopped. The words had found the exact place she should not have touched. You know nothing of what I fear. No. You keep it very well guarded. And you keep your purpose hidden. Do not lecture me on candor. Eleanor went cold. Nathaniel regretted it at once. She saw the regret. And that made the wound worse. Not better. You are right. She said. I concealed why Ravensmere's name mattered to me. I have neither stolen a paper nor altered a fact in this house. But I understand that silence can bend the meaning of honest work. She set the bucket square under the leak and walked past him. He let her go. That night, Nathaniel entered the old estate room for the first time since inheriting. Maps lay rolled in cases. Survey books filled 3 cabinets. His father had kept the room at a permanent temperature of disapproval. Nathaniel could almost hear him objecting to the dust. He found the mine report in the 2nd cabinet. The final copy was 27 pages. His own signature stood at the end beneath a statement, accepting the conclusion that Thomas Hartwell's unapproved pump caused a pressure failure. Nathaniel remembered the letter that accompanied it. Sign at once. Families wait. Scandal injures all. He read every page. The report described the pump, but did not include Hartwell's original measurements. It referred to an appendix of water levels that was not attached. On page 19, a sentence had been scraped and rewritten. The paper thinned where a different direction of seepage had once been named. At midnight, Nathaniel sent for Fenwick. The surveyor appeared in a dressing gown beneath his coat and looked offended by wakefulness. Where is the water appendix to the north? Mine report. Fenwick blinked. I could not say after 4 years. You signed the list of enclosures. Then it was enclosed. It is not here. Your father may have removed it. Why? The late Duke removed many things. Nathaniel placed the report on the table. Find it. Fenwick looked at the scraped sentence. Only once. It was enough. Of course. Your Grace. After he left, Nathaniel remained beside the lamp until dawn. For 4 years he had believed his quickest signature an act of mercy. Now the ink looked like cowardice. At breakfast, Eleanor's place at the lower end of the table was empty. She did not dine there by right. But Clara had insisted from her first week, and Nathaniel had ceased pretending to object. She has gone to the village infirmary, Clara said. Why? 3 children are ill. He put down his coffee. The village infirmary occupied 2 rooms above the coper's shop. Eleanor found 7 patients when she arrived, all from cottages along the lower brook. Fever had not yet come, but vomiting, stomach pain, and a strange weakness had. She asked what they had eaten. Different meals. She asked what they had drunk. The same public pump. Dr. Hale. A young man with red hands and an anxious manner, said Spring. Rains often clouded the lower well. Clouding does not produce this sweet metal taste. Eleanor said. You tasted it. A drop. That was unwise. Now we share a useful concern. She sent Jem to Ravensmere for clean water from the west kitchen pump. Charcoal, blankets, and every large covered vessel the dairy could spare. She asked the cooper to close the public pump and station his largest apprentice beside it. Then she followed the brook uphill. Nathaniel caught her near the first meadow. You might have sent word. I did. You are the word arriving. What has happened? She told him. Anger stripped the last sleep from his face. Fenwick inspected that pump in January. Mr. Fenwick has inspected a remarkable number of failures. They reached the stone wellhead. Yellow residue marked one side. The same pale crust as the hidden culvert. Nathaniel saw it. The diverted water, or water from the same source. He looked toward Voss's survey stakes. What do you need? It was the first time he asked without first naming a limit. Every covered water cart. Men to carry from the west spring. Lime for the privies. Clean cloth. And authority. To close any pump, I judge, unsafe. You have it. Dr. Hale needs the dining room at the Crown cleared for patients. Done. And no one is to blame the villagers for dirt.
His gaze sharpened. Who has, no one yet, prevented? Nathaniel turned to Jem. Ride ahead. Tell Mr. Ellison Miss Hartwell's list outranks every household request until the village has clean water. Jem grinned and ran. For 3 days. Ravensmere became a machine built around water. Carts rolled at dawn. Kitchen maids boiled cloth. Footmen carried covered cans into cottages. Clara wrote labels and sat with frightened mothers. Sabine came without invitation, removed her fine gloves, and organized food at the Crown. Mrs. Greaves released stores without asking for a signature. Nathaniel did whatever Eleanor placed before him. He hauled a water barrel when a wheel stuck in mud. He persuaded 2 suspicious farmers to close private wells. He stood in the public square and told every tenant the fault was Ravensmere's until proved otherwise, and that no rent would be collected from a household unable to work. Sir Peregrine objected in private. You admit liability before you understand the cause. I accept responsibility for water crossing my land. Miss Hartwell has filled your head with hospital alarms. Miss Hartwell has filled my tenants' cups with water that does not make them ill. Peregrine studied him. You are becoming theatrical. Then you may leave before the 2nd act. By the 4th morning, no new patients had fallen ill. The first children sat up and asked for bread. Eleanor left the Crown after dawn and found Nathaniel waiting with 2 cups of coffee. Cook claims this one contains enough sugar to revive a cavalry regiment. Cook has witnessed my temper without coffee. He handed it to her. They sat on the low wall outside the inn. The village street glistened after rain. I read the report. He said. Eleanor held the cup still. The appendix is missing. A line was altered. Fenwick claims ignorance. Do you believe him? No. She let out a breath she had held for 4 years. Then discovered relief could hurt. Thomas may still have been wrong. Yes. The pump may still have failed. Yes. but you no longer know. No.
It was the honesty she had wanted. And because it came without defense, it undid her. Nathaniel looked down the wet street. I signed because my father said the families needed the compensation. I told myself speed was mercy. In truth, I did not want to quarrel with him from 3 countries away. 11 men died. And I chose peace at a writing desk. You did not cause the blast. Do not absolve me cheaply. I would not insult either of us. He turned to her. Thomas wrote that the survey was altered. She said, he also wrote that the new shaft had found water under pressure where Fenwick's map showed dry limestone. He intended to stop work. The blast occurred the next morning. Why did you not tell me beside the mill race? Because I had no proof. And grief has made me foolish before. Grief has made me many things. Foolish is the kindest. Their shoulders almost touched. Neither moved. The inn door opened. Clara stepped out, saw them, and stepped back inside with unnecessary speed. Eleanor looked into her coffee. Your sister is subtle. Clara believes subtlety means closing a door before laughing. He smiled then. Not briefly, and not by accident. The severity left his face. Eleanor saw the younger man he might have been before inheritance, and death taught him to guard every expression. Something in her chest shifted toward him. She stood at once. We should inspect the west pump. Naturally, the 30th day arrived beneath clear skies. At 9 o'clock, the servants gathered around the slate. No one mentioned the wager. But coins had changed pockets below stairs all morning. Bess wore a clean apron and carried the red action book. Jem had polished the brass bell flags until they caught the sun. Mrs. Greaves stood straighter than she had a month before. Eleanor reviewed the day. West pump samples to Dr. Hale. Masons to open the concealed conduit near the dairy meadow. Linen inventory after luncheon. Guest rooms for the county water commissioners. Storm drill at 4. Because thunderheads had been seen over the western ridge. When she finished, Nathaniel entered. He held the written authority he had signed 30 days earlier. Miss Hartwell. The servants became perfectly attentive. Eleanor folded her hands. Your Grace, your term expires at noon. Mrs. Greaves's lips tightened. Bess looked ready to ring every bell in protest. Nathaniel glanced around the hall. In 30 days, the household has answered 1 flood. 1 contaminated well. 14 years of mislabeled bells. And a quantity of cold eggs that I am told constituted a moral emergency. No servant has been dismissed. Expenditure is lower. Repairs are faster. The village infirmary reports no new illness. He held out the paper. I was wrong. The words fell without ornament. A duke's apology had no legal force. But in that hall it altered rank more effectively than a proclamation. I ask you to remain through midsummer. He continued, with authority over household safety and coordination. At twice Lady Augusta's salary. After midsummer, if we have not destroyed each other, we will write a permanent office. Eleanor looked at the paper. Twice the salary. Do not become sentimental. I was calculating whether 3 times would be more dignified. Laughter broke first from Clara at the stair. Then from the servants. Even Mr. Ellison surrendered a cough. Nathaniel's eyes warmed. Twice. With rooms of your choosing and a seat at the estate meeting. A speaking seat. I already know the danger of giving you one. Then I accept. Bess pulled the laundry bell. Jem answered it from 6 feet away. Someone in the kitchen rang another. Within seconds, every bell on the board began to dance. An iron celebration rolling through the servants' hall. Nathaniel raised his voice over the noise. Is this your idea of order? Eleanor smiled. It is the sound of a house answering. He looked at her as though the bells had said something else entirely. Midsummer stood 6 weeks away. Ravensmere had survived Eleanor's month. Now, it had to survive the truth. The concealed conduit was opened under the eyes of Nathaniel, Eleanor, Fenwick, and 2 county commissioners. Fresh brickwork hid inside an 18th century wall. The channel diverted water from the upper spring, carried it beneath the dairy meadow, and joined the old mill race above the house. Fenwick declared it a forgotten overflow. An overflow does not run uphill, Eleanor said. It descends 3 inches over 200 yards. According to whose measurements? Mine. Then your measurements require examination. One commissioner hid a smile. They found a second branch, leading toward Voss land. Its iron gate could send water either to Ravensmere's lower brook or toward the proposed canal feeder. In ordinary weather, the diversion weakened the village wells. In heavy rain, closing the Voss gate forced the whole upper spring toward the house and eastern cellars. The oak wedge had not been random neglect. It had prevented Ravensmere's winter sluice from relieving the pressure. Someone arranged the flood, Nathaniel said. Fenwick's face remained pale and dry. That is an extravagant conclusion. A laundry maid nearly drowned. Old systems behave unpredictably. Eleanor touched the iron hinge. A foundry stamp marked its underside. A hawk, above the letter V. Voss, Ironworks. Sabine said. From behind them, no one had heard her approach. Sir Peregrine's daughter came down the bank in a cream walking dress, already stained at the hem. She looked at the gate. Then at Fenwick. My father's work supplied this. Many estates purchase Voss iron. Fenwick said, not without invoices. Lady Sabine. Nathaniel began. Do not protect me from knowing what bears my name. Her voice did not rise. Fenwick looked away first. Sabine asked to speak with Eleanor alone. They walked along the orchard wall while the men argued over jurisdiction. My father will say Fenwick acted to demonstrate the value of modern drainage. Sabine said, did he? My father never performs an action that has only one use. Ravensmere's disorder lowers the price of its land. Flooded cellars make the canal offer appear merciful. Sick tenants make the estate appear badly managed. A compromised duke becomes grateful for a relative who can arrange both money and marriage. You knew. I knew he wanted the spring. I did not know he had already touched it. Why tell me? Sabine stopped beneath a pear tree. Because my brother was meant to marry Clara. He reported every frightened letter she wrote as proof of her dependence. I said nothing. I told myself it was not my choice to make. Then he died. And I watched everyone praise a future that would have made her miserable. Silence is not the same as malice. It is not the same as innocence either. Eleanor thought of 4 years in which she had hated a report she had not seen, a duke she had not met, and a household that contained both guilt and ignorance. Help us prove what happened, she said. Not because you owe me a confession. Because the next gate they close may have a child behind it. Sabine nodded once. That afternoon, Sir Peregrine learned the commissioners had inspected the conduit. His pleasant manner did not change. He merely moved faster. An invitation arrived for Nathaniel to attend a private meeting at Voss House concerning the bonds. Fenwick left Ravensmere on the pretext of collecting old survey books. 2 clerks from the Canal Company appeared at the estate office, requesting copies of spring right documents. Eleanor doubled the watches at the eastern gate and ordered every old plan moved into the stone muniment room. Nathaniel objected to the word, ordered only after he helped carry the map cases. You are enjoying this, she said. I have discovered manual labor permits a duke to avoid callers. If the peerage learns, the nation may collapse. They worked until dusk in the map room. Dust lay over tables and rolled vellum. Clara read labels. Sabine compared Voss correspondence against canal surveys. Mr. Ellison brought supper on a tray and pretended not to notice that Eleanor and Nathaniel reached for the same map weight. Their hands touched. Neither withdrew immediately. Nathaniel's fingers were warm, the scar across his knuckle pale. Eleanor looked up. Dust softened the severity of his black coat. He was close enough that she could see green flecks around his pupils. "Miss Hartwell," he said. Her name sounded unlike a reprimand. Clara dropped a bundle of papers with tremendous force. They stepped apart. "How unfortunate," Clara said. The string failed. Sabine examined the unbroken string. "A tragédie." Eleanor returned to the map, unable to read a single word. "Near midnight." Clara found a reference to Thomas Hartwell's field chain book in an inventory made after the mine blast. Returned to Voss Engineering Office for technical review. No return date followed. Nathaniel read the line twice. Peregrine had Thomas's measurements. Or Fenwick did. Eleanor said, "Why would my father permit that?" "Because Voss financed the mine extension." Sabine answered, "My father insisted upon his own engineer." Nathaniel looked at her. Did Charles know? Sabine's face gave nothing. Charles knew whatever Papa required him to know. Eleanor touched the inventory line. The paper trembled beneath her finger. "A chain book is small," she said. "Oilskin cover. Perhaps 6 inches by 4. Thomas kept his in an inner pocket. Then someone removed it from his body." Nathaniel said. No one spoke. The map room clock struck 12. Nathaniel took a blank sheet and wrote an order to the Voss office for every paper connected to the blast. He sealed it with the ducal seal and handed it to Mr. Ellison. "Send 2 riders. They are not to return without a written answer." Eleanor watched the wax harden. "Peregrine will know we have found the inventory. He already knows we are looking. Then the pretense is over." Good. The riders returned at dawn with no papers. The Voss Engineering Office had burned during the night. The fire destroyed 3 rooms and spared the adjoining counting house. Sir Peregrine called it a terrible accident. Fenwick called it proof that old chimneys were dangerous. Sabine said nothing at breakfast and broke the handle from her teacup. Before noon, Sabine asked Nathaniel and Eleanor to meet her in the small chapel. On the night of the fire, she said. Fenwick had arrived at Voss House carrying a flat leather case under his coat. She had heard him demand money and a place on the first packet boat from Liverpool. When Peregrine told him the engineering office and everything in it would be ash by morning, Fenwick tapped the case and said the original remained his insurance until he stood on foreign ground. "My father called him a coward," Sabine said. Fenwick answered that loyal men are buried with empty pockets. "The chain book," Eleanor said. "I believe so." Fenwick kept the proof to protect himself from Papa, not to protect the dead. He expected to collect his canal shares at Midsummer and leave England immediately after. Nathaniel sent men to watch the roads, inns, and packet offices. Fenwick remained at Ravensmere under the excuse that the floodgates required his supervision. Always in sight and never carrying the leather case. They searched his rooms under the magistrate's warrant and found money, 2 pistols, and an empty map tube. The case stayed hidden. Nathaniel sent for the magistrate without the chain book. They still possessed the diverted water, the Voss iron, the altered report, and the missing appendix. Enough to stop the canal agreement. Not enough to clear Thomas's name or prove who had caused the mine blast. Eleanor told herself that stopping the sale mattered more. She told herself the dead did not require verdicts. She told herself many sensible things and slept badly. Nathaniel found her before dawn in the servants' hall, rewriting the storm plan. You have moved the children from the lower cottages. Only if the river reaches the red mark at Miller's Bridge. The forecast is clear. The western ridge has held heat for 3 days. The swallows are low. Head groom expects thunder. Fenwick says the new gate can carry any summer storm. Mr. Fenwick says many things near gates he fitted. Nathaniel sat across from her. You have not slept. Neither have you. I have the privilege of looking terrible without comment. Rank has few advantages so practical. He leaned his forearms on the table. I am sorry about the chain book. You did not burn the office. I helped give Peregrine the power to believe he could. There you are again. Where, standing in the center of every wrong, because guilt feels more like command than uncertainty. He stared at her. Eleanor softened her voice. Your father's failures are not proof that every consequence belongs to you. Responsibility asks what you do next. Guilt asks only that you suffer impressively. And which are you doing for Thomas? The question was fair. That did not make it kind. She closed the storm book. Both. I expect. Eleanor. It was the first time he used her given name. Her anger vanished too quickly. I do not know how to set this right. He said, begin by not selling the spring. I informed Peregrine yesterday. She looked up. The bonds will come due in October. We may lose the South Farms. I will not sign the canal agreement. Because of the evidence. Because water should not be sold by a man who has not yet learned where it goes. The words belonged to her. Altered by his understanding. Eleanor felt the change between them as surely as pressure before rain. That may be the most expensive lesson I have ever taught. You intend to demand 3 times the salary after all. At least. He reached across the table and covered her ink-stained hand with his stay after Midsummer. The request contained more than employment. Both heard it. Eleanor's pulse moved beneath his palm. Write the permanent office first. Coward. Administrator. His thumb moved once against her knuckle. The breakfast bell rang. They drew apart. But the room did not return to what it had been. Sir Peregrine made his attack 3 days before the Midsummer Assembly. He did not accuse Eleanor of theft. He understood that evidence would defeat him there. He accused her of using Ravensmere's trust to place its private workings before strangers, the county water commissioners, the magistrate, Lady Augusta, and 6 principal tenants had gathered in Ravensmere's great drawing room to hear whether the canal agreement would proceed. Peregrine arrived late and calm, carrying Thomas's published obituary and a packet of Eleanor's letters. 2 letters were 4 years old. Appeals to the office that investigated the mine disaster. A third was dated 12 days after Eleanor entered Ravensmere. It went to the senior county water commissioner under Lady Augusta's private frank. Eleanor had described the fresh oak wedge, the eastern flood, and the yellow residue in the concealed conduit. A fourth enclosed her sketch of the internal channel and a sealed sample from the village pump. In it, she asked the commission to suspend any transfer of Ravensmere's spring until an independent inspection could be forced. Nathaniel knew why Thomas's death had brought her to Ravensmere. He did not know that before she trusted him with that truth, she had already carried the danger beyond his walls. He did not know that after they began to work together. She sent the second letter as insurance, in case he chose Peregrine's money over her measurements. Miss Hartwell entered this house under color of employment, Peregrine said, then copied its private waterworks and invited officials to interfere with an agreement essential to the estate. She did not wait for Wexford to judge the facts. She arranged that he should be judged if his conclusion displeased her. Her brother's tragic error explains her grief. It does not make her an impartial authority. Every eye turned to Eleanor. Nathaniel stood by the mantel. He had known of Thomas, but not the letters sent from beneath his own roof. Hurt appeared before discipline covered it. Did you write them? He asked. Yes. Did you send a drawing of the eastern conduit before you told me who Thomas was? Yes. And the water sample after we had begun investigating together? Yes. Did Lady Augusta know? She lent me her franc for the first letter. She did not know I sent the second. Why did you not tell me? Eleanor forced herself not to look away. Because I feared you might sign the canal agreement before evidence could overcome obligation. I wanted an authority neither you nor Peregrine could quietly dismiss. Peregrine spread his hands. Hope is such a gentle word for infiltration. Sabine rose. Papa. Sit down. No. The single word cut cleanly. Peregrine looked at his daughter as though furniture had spoken. Sabine continued. You knew who Miss Hartwell was before she arrived. His expression did not move. Your clerk showed me her first letter 4 years ago. Sabine said. You said grief made women persistent, and persistence made them careless. You kept the copies. Murmurs crossed the room. Peregrine smiled with tired sorrow. My daughter has been distressed by recent events. Your daughter is giving evidence, Eleanor said, and you are hardly in a position to define honesty. That struck. Eleanor accepted it. No, she said. I should have told the Duke before I sent either report. I believed obligation would close the door before I could prove the room was burning. That belief may explain my concealment. It does not excuse it. Nathaniel's face remained unreadable. Eleanor turned to the commissioners. Sending private measurements without the Duke's knowledge was wrong. I did it because a maid nearly drowned, and because a village well had begun to make children ill. My concealment does not alter the direction of the conduit. It did not forge the Voss mark on its iron. Scrape a sentence from the mine report. Or remove its appendix. Examine my conduct as strictly as you please. Then examine the water with the same care. Peregrine's smile thinned. The senior commissioner cleared his throat. The canal agreement cannot proceed while title to the spring and the safety of the diversion remained disputed. Peregrine had lost the agreement. He had not lost gracefully. Then Ravensmere may explain to its bondholders why a disappointed spinster's suspicions matter more than £80,000. Nathaniel moved at last. You will not speak of Miss Hartwell that way in my house. Eleanor's heart lifted, then stopped when he looked at her. But this meeting is ended. I require time to consider what has been concealed from me by every side. Every side. He meant Peregrine. He also meant her. The distinction mattered less than the distance in his voice. Eleanor gathered her papers. Of course. Your Grace. She walked out beneath the gaze of the county, carrying the red action book under one arm. By evening, every servant knew there had been a rupture. Bells sounded too loudly. Doors closed too gently. Mrs. Greaves sent supper to Eleanor's room. Clara came twice and was refused twice. Eleanor packed neither trunk nor gown. Because storm clouds stood over the western ridge, and personal misery did not improve evacuation. At 10. Nathaniel came to the servants' hall. Eleanor stood over the weatherboard with head groom and 2 tenant wardens. She did not stop. If Miller's Bridge reaches red, ring the chapel bell 3 times. Lower cottages go to the church ridge. Water carts to the west yard. No carriage uses the older road after midnight. The men nodded and left. Nathaniel waited until the door shut. You might have trusted me. When I sent the first letter, I did not know you. When I sent the second, I knew you had begun to listen. And I still chose an official safeguard over trust. You asked every servant in this house to bring bad news without fear, while you carried Ravensmere's private workings to the commission without telling me. Yes. He flinched at the answer. I have no clever defense, she said. I knew Peregrine's money might outweigh my word. I chose safety before trust, and told myself success would make the method honorable. It did not. Was any part of this work untouched by your investigation? The question hurt because he needed to ask it. Bess was not an investigation. The village children were not. Clara was not. Mrs. Greaves's exhaustion. Yem's stool. Cook's numbers. Your cold eggs. Every bell on that board, none existed to clear Thomas. Ravensmere required the work. And I loved doing it. Loved the work. She looked at him. Do not ask the question beneath that one while you are angry. Thunder rolled beyond the hill. Nathaniel's gaze dropped to her hands. I do not know which part of you to believe. Believe what can be tested. It is what I asked you to do with the water. People are not measurements. No, they are more difficult and less obedient. Rain struck the high windows. He turned toward the door. Nathaniel. He stopped, but did not face her. Whatever you decide about me, follow the storm plan. You think me so proud I would risk lives to resist your handwriting. I think pain makes all of us stupid in our favorite ways. He left without answering. At midnight, the western sky broke open. Rain came not in drops but in a single descending weight. Within 20 minutes, the gutters overflowed. Within 40, the lake rose over the lower step. The old mill race carried a black torrent past the orchard. Eleanor stood before the bellboard in boots and a cloak. Calling reports. West Yard secure. Dairy cattle moved. Miller's Bridge at yellow. Lower Brook, rising. Bess marked each message in chalk. Jem carried orders. Mrs. Greaves turned the great hall into a shelter with blankets, lamps, and hot broth. Clara organized names as families arrived from the lowest cottages. At 1 o'clock, the chapel bell rang 3 times. Read at Miller's Bridge. Eleanor pulled the estate alarm. Every bell on the board jumped. The house answered. Footmen ran to carts. Stablemen opened the west gate. Kitchen workers lifted stores from cellar shelves. Nathaniel came down the main stair in shirt sleeves and riding boots. Where? The new diversion gate is holding water against the upper bank. If it fails westward, it strikes the lower village. If someone opens it eastward, it floods the house, but spares the cottages. Can it be opened? The wheel is on Voss land. Then we go there. Ego. You remain at command. No. Ravensmere needs its master visible. Ravensmere knows its master. The gate needs the woman who understands it. For 1 second, the fracture remained between them. Then Nathaniel took the red storm book from her hand. Tell me what to do. Publicly. Before servants. To none. His sister. And Lady Augusta. The Duke of Wexford asked for her command. Eleanor pointed to the board. Mr. Ellison holds the house. Mrs. Greaves holds the shelter. Clara holds the list. Your Grace. Bring 6 men. 2 axes. Ropes. And the long iron lever from the forge. And you, I am bringing the measurements. They rode through rain so dense the lanterns seemed trapped in glass. The path to the diversion gate crossed the upper meadow, where water already reached the horses' knees. Eleanor rode beside Nathaniel. Behind them came the blacksmith. 4 estate men. Yem and Sabina, who had appeared in a man's greatcoat and refused to remain behind. My father will be at the gate. She shouted over the storm. How do you know? Because he will open it toward the village and call the flood an act of God. They found Sir Peregrine beneath a canvas shelter with Fenwick and 2 canal men. Lanterns lit the gate wheel. The western sluice stood half open toward the lower brook. Close it, Eleanor shouted. Fenwick seized the wheel. Nathaniel rode directly between him and the mechanism. Take your hand off. Peregrine stepped forward. Rain streamed from the brim of his hat. The bank will fail if pressure is not released. Release it toward the mill race, Eleanor said, and flood Ravensmere Hall. Stone cellars can be repaired. Children in the lower village cannot. You have no authority on this land. Nathaniel dismounted. She has mine. The words crossed the water like a thrown blade. Fenwick turned the western wheel another notch. Sabine struck his hand with the butt of her lantern. He cried out and lost his grip. Forgive my distress, she said. Recent events have made me theatrical. The estate men moved in. Peregrine's canal workers stepped back. Eleanor reached the eastern wheel and found it chained. Eggs. The blacksmith swung. Iron rang. The chain held. Water climbed the bank, carrying branches and fence rails. Somewhere below, masonry cracked. Again. The second blow split a link. They dragged the chain free, fitted the long lever through the wheel, and pushed. Nothing moved. The gate is pinned, Eleanor said. Fenwick ran. Jem tackled him in the mud. The flat leather case Sabine had described flew from inside Fenwick's coat and struck a stone. Its clasp broke. Banknotes, a Liverpool packet schedule, and a small oilskin book slid into the rain. Fenwick had come to force the western gate, collect Peregrine's promised escape money, and ride for the coast before dawn. He had carried his insurance, because once the village drowned, Peregrine would have no further reason to let him live. Eleanor saw Thomas's initials before she touched it. Time narrowed. For one dangerous beat, the storm, the gate, and every living person disappeared. There was only the worn black cover her brother had carried through Belgium, France, and home. Nathaniel caught her shoulder. Eleanor. The water rose around their boots. She put the book inside her bodice and returned to the wheel. The pin will be below the east housing. Roper. No. The release is underwater. Then I go. You do not know its position. Show me. There was no time to argue rank or sacrifice. Eleanor tied a rope around both of them, took the second line from the blacksmith, and went down the stone steps into the flood with Nathaniel at her side. Water struck her waist, then her ribs. The current pulled toward the western opening. She felt along the gate housing, found the iron box, and drove her fingers beneath it. Here. Nathaniel reached past her. The pin would not move. Above them, men strained on the ropes. Rain blinded Eleanor. The bank made another deep sound. Turn it first, she shouted. A quarter turn, then pull. Nathaniel gripped the ring with both hands. The current threw him against her. Together they twisted. Rust broke. The pin came free so suddenly they fell backward into the water. The men hauled them up. Lever, Eleanor gasped. 8 people pushed. The wheel groaned. For one moment, the gate resisted as if the whole hill held it shut. Then it opened. Water tore east into the old mill race. The western flow slowed. The bank shuddered, but remained. Below them, Ravensmere's eastern court would flood again. The laundry would fill. Stone, plaster, stores, and furniture would be lost. The village lights remained above water. Nathaniel stood beside Eleanor, soaked to the skin, his hand still locked around hers. Sir Peregrine stared at the eastern torrent. You have destroyed your own house. Nathaniel looked at the man who had advised his father, financed the mine, courted his sister's future, and nearly purchased Ravensmere's spring. No, he said. I have discovered what it is for. Be done. The storm passed. The eastern cellars flooded to the ceiling. The laundry lost 2 presses. The coal room collapsed, and 36 hams sailed into the orchard. No one died. Every family from the lower cottages slept on Ravensmere's dry upper floor or in the church. The village bridge lost one parapet and held. Fenwick sat under guard in the stable office. Sir Peregrine remained in the great hall because the magistrate had closed the roads. Sabine gave evidence against her father before breakfast. Eleanor waited until the last evacuated child was matched to a name. Then she opened Thomas's chain book. The first pages held ordinary levels and distances. The final 6 recorded the North Mine. Thomas had drawn the new shaft, Fenwick's pump line, and a mass of water-bearing stone above both. On the day before the blast, he wrote that Voss's trial cutting had pierced an old underground channel. He ordered all blasting stopped. Beneath that entry lay a note in another hand, authorizing work to continue. Proceed to maintain bond schedule. Risk overstated. P. Voss. The next page contained Thomas's copy of a letter to the late Duke. He warned that Fenwick had reversed 2 watermarks on the official survey. He asked for an independent inspection. At the bottom, in hurried pencil, Thomas wrote that Fenwick had demanded the chain book and threatened dismissal. The blast came before the letter could leave. Nathaniel read in silence. The magistrate read. The commissioners compared the figures to the scraped line in the final report. Fenwick denied the handwriting, then denied having the book, then accused Peregrine. Each denial broke against a fact. Peregrine made no confession. Men who construct their lives from authority rarely imagine truth deserves their assistance. He said Thomas had been insubordinate. He said the late Duke understood necessity. He said mines always cost lives, and estates always cost money. Sabine listened until he finished. No, Papa, she said. Men like you cost lives and call the price necessity. He looked older then. Not sorry, merely seen. The magistrate took him away with Fenwick when the road opened. Eleanor remained at the map room table after everyone left. Thomas's chain book lay beneath her hands. For 4 years, she had imagined proof would feel like triumph. It felt like grief receiving its proper name. Nathaniel stood across from her. His name will be cleared publicly, he said. Every family will receive the corrected report. Ravensmere will pay the compensation that was denied because of the false finding. The estate cannot afford it. Then the South farms may be sold. You love those farms. 11 families loved 11 men. Eleanor closed the book. Do not make ruin into penance. It is restitution. Then, let us calculate what is owed before you offer everything pain suggests. He came around the table. Us. If my permanent office still exists. His face tightened. The storm had not washed away the fracture. I had no right to ask whether your work was false. He said. I had seen it. I had lived inside the proof of it for 30 days. You had the right to be hurt. I used hurt as a reason to doubt what I knew. That is the habit I learned from my father. A difficult truth arrived, and I made the messenger stand trial. Eleanor looked at him. I should have told you, she said. Yes. You should have read the report. Yes. You should not have called me a disappointed spinster in the drawing room. Peregrine said that. I wished to see whether guilt had damaged your memory. Relief entered his eyes. Cruel woman. Difficult Duke. He took her hands. Mud remained beneath his nails. A bruise darkened his jaw. Nothing about the moment resembled a ballroom or a perfect proposal. And Eleanor wanted no prettier truth. I believed authority meant never letting another person direct me, he said. Then the water rose. And the only honorable thing I could do was ask you what came next. You followed very well. I intend to practice. He lifted one of her hands to his mouth, but stopped before touching it. Stay at Ravensmere. Not because Thomas died here. Not because the house needs you. Though it does. Stay because every room changes when you enter it. Including the rooms in me. I had mistaken for locked. Her breath caught. That sounds dangerously like a proposal. It is not one. No, you told me to write the permanent office first. I have learned not to ignore instructions involving danger. He kissed her knuckles. The proposal will come when you possess a salary. Authority. No marriage can remove. And enough knowledge of me to refuse without losing your work or your home. Eleanor's eyes burned. That is annoyingly sensible. Your influence. She touched the scar at his temple. Then I will stay. He closed his eyes for 1 second beneath her hand. Outside. Every bell in Ravensmere began to ring. Not alarm this time. Celebration. The Midsummer assembly took place 2 days late in the western courtyard, because the great drawing room smelled of river mud. Tenants stood beside county gentlemen. Servants watched from the open arches. Laundry sheets, newly washed after the flood, moved like white banners above the orchard. Nathaniel stood on the low steps with Lady Augusta, Clara, Sabine, the commissioners, and Eleanor. He did not speak first of crime. He spoke of responsibility. He read Thomas Hartwell's corrected finding. He named the 10 miners who had died beside him. He described the diverted spring, the false survey, and the choice made at the floodgate. He did not improve his own part. 4 years ago, I signed a report I had not read closely enough because obedience was easier than conflict. 3 days ago, when the truth became personally painful, I nearly repeated the error by doubting the woman who brought it. Ravensmere will not be governed that way again. The courtyard was utterly quiet. He announced an independent water trust held jointly by the estate and elected tenant wardens. The spring would never be sold without their consent. Mine compensation would be reviewed by an outside solicitor. Household dangers could be reported directly without retaliation. The Red Action Book would become a permanent record of repairs completed, not promises made. Then Nathaniel turned to Eleanor. Miss Hartwell arrived in a storm and found my servants unable to answer a bell. I gave her 30 days because I believed no outsider could understand Ravensmere. In 30 days, she understood not only the house, but the habits that kept it helpless. At the floodgate, while others argued ownership, she understood what a house was for. He held out a sealed document, by agreement with Mrs. Greaves, Mr. Ellison, and the Estate Council. I appoint Miss Eleanor Hartwell, Director of Household and Estate Welfare at Ravensmere, with independent salary, authority over safety, water, stores, and emergency coordination, and a permanent seat and vote at every estate meeting. Whispers moved through the county gentlemen. Among the servants, Bess began to cry. Eleanor accepted the document. A vote, a speaking vote. I know the danger. Laughter broke across the courtyard. Nathaniel did not take his eyes from her. I said she would not last a month. By midsummer, my household, my to none. And I had learned to take her orders. Mr. Ellison bowed to Eleanor first. Mrs. Greaves followed. Not as a servant to a superior, but as one officer acknowledging another. Then the tenant wardens bowed. Un by un. The household joined them. Eleanor stood in sunlight, with Thomas's chain book beneath one arm and her own authority in her hand. She had not entered Ravensmere to become visible. She had entered because work waited, and a question had remained unanswered. Now the answer stood not in applause but in changed practice. The lower village had clean water. A maid's bell possessed a true name. A duke had learned that command without listening was only decorated ignorance. The feast began beneath striped awnings. Cook produced pies rescued from the west pantry, 3 hams recovered from the orchard, and a cake that leaned but did not fall. Musicians played near the dry fountain. Children ran where floodwater had crossed 2 nights before. Clara found Eleanor beside the cider table. "You know he is going to ask you. Your brother has displayed unusual patience. Nathaniel has displayed agony. It resembles patience at a distance." Sabine joined them in a dark blue gown, free of her father's colors. "He asked me whether public proposals are coercive." Eleanor nearly dropped her cup. "He asked you. He has become democratic in his terror." Clara smiled. "I told him you would refuse if he made a spectacle. I told him you might accept if he made an argument." Sabine said, "You are both forbidden from advising him." "Too late," Clara answered. Nathaniel crossed the courtyard toward them. He had removed the black coat he wore like armor and appeared in shirt sleeves beneath a plain dark waistcoat. Speaking to tenants as he came, he paused to listen to the coper, changed direction to avoid 2 children with cake, and reached Eleanor without commanding the space around her. "Will you walk? Is there a prepared audience behind the rose hedge?" "Only 3 gardeners. And I have bribed them to look at cabbages." They walked toward the upper spring. The storm had washed the sky clear. Water moved bright over the repaired channel, directed now toward the village reservoir and Ravensmere's western cistern. Red and white markers showed safe levels along the stone. At the small bridge, Nathaniel stopped. "I had a speech." "What happened to it?" "Clara improved it." Sabine corrected the improvement. "Augusta called us all idiots." "Lady Augusta is frequently efficient." "So I abandoned it." He took a folded paper from his waistcoat. "This is not the appointment. That is already yours. It remains yours whether your answer is yes, no, or ask me next year." Eleanor looked at the paper but did not take it. "What is this?" "A proposed marriage settlement. Your salary remains separate. Your authority does not derive from being my wife. Any property you bring remains under trustees you choose. Ravensmere's water trust cannot be altered by either of us alone." Clara insisted upon that clause. "Naturally. There is also a house in Bakewell settled for your aunt." Nathaniel. "Too much. Far too much paper." He lowered it, for the first time since she had known him. The Duke of Wexford looked entirely uncertain. Then, without paper, he said, "Eleanor, I love your mind when it cuts through mine. I love the way you make kindness practical. I love that you do not confuse my title with my character. And I intend to give you better character to discover. I cannot promise never to become proud, silent, or afraid. I can promise that when you ring the bell, I will answer." Eleanor's throat tightened. That was almost a speech. "I feared so. I love you too." He became very still. "That is not yet an answer," she said. "Cruel woman. Patient Duke." She took the settlement, folded it once more, and placed it in her pocket. "Yes. After my aunt's house is settled. After the water commissioners issue their report. And after you learn to attend the morning meeting without criticizing the slate. The final condition is impossible. Then we shall enjoy a long engagement." Nathaniel laughed and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her beside the spring, where water moved freely through a gate neither of them could open alone. By August, Ravensmere Hall had acquired a new eastern laundry on higher ground, a corrected system of drains, and 12 bells that answered to their proper names. Bess became assistant to Mrs. Greaves and inspected every service passage after rain. Yem, rewarded for tackling Fenwick, became the youngest clerk in the estate office and discovered that figures were less dangerous than floodwater. Clara took charge of the new village school and refused 2 eligible men before anyone dared call her ungrateful. Sabine leased a cottage near the West Meadow, served on the Water Trust, and gave evidence that helped convict Fenwick of conspiracy and falsification. Sir Peregrine faced trial for the mine deaths, the diverted water, and the destruction of records. His rank slowed justice. It did not stop it. The South farms were not sold. An independent review found bonds Peregrine had inflated through companies he controlled. Once removed, Ravensmere's debt remained serious, but survivable. Nathaniel opened the estate books to the tenant wardens twice each year. He hated the meetings, which Eleanor considered proof of their value. Thomas Hartwell's name was cleared in every newspaper that had printed blame. Eleanor carried the corrected report to her father's grave and read it aloud. Nathaniel stood several paces away, near enough if she needed him, and far enough that the words belonged first to her. They married in early autumn, beneath a sky washed clean by rain. Eleanor wore ivory silk without jewels, except her mother's small gold cross. Nathaniel waited at the altar with the expression of a man trusting joy despite incomplete evidence. Lady Augusta cried openly and denied it afterward. Mrs. Greaves permitted the household 1 uncontrolled hour of bells. Marriage altered titles. It did not alter the morning meeting. On the first Monday after their return, Nathaniel entered the servants' hall at 9:09 and found Eleanor beside the slate. "You are late, Your Grace." I was informed. Marriage offered certain privileges, not against clocks. Mr. Ellison placed a folded request on the table. "The West Guest Room requires a new grate." Nathaniel reached for the paper. Eleanor covered it with one finger. "Cost £3. 8 shillings, said Mrs. Greaves. "Safety. The old grate is cracked." Eleanor looked at Nathaniel. He released the request. "Proceed without my signature." The servants remained solemn until he added, "I'm told the person standing nearest the danger may judge." Eleanor smiled. "You have been listening. Constantly. It is exhausting." The meeting moved on. Carts. Qual. School repairs. Winter blankets. Drainage above the dairy meadow. No decision waited beneath a duke's unopened papers. No report required fear before it travelled upward. When the final bell rang, Nathaniel stayed beside the board. "What is that one?" "The East Laundry." "And this?" "Clara's schoolroom." He touched the brass flag that had once been labelled for no true room at all. "And that?" Eleanor looked at him. "My office. If it rings, you answer." He bent and kissed her. Scandalizing Jem and delighting Bess. Outside, autumn sunlight crossed the repaired court. Water ran beneath the stones in channels measured, marked, and shared. Ravensmere was not a perfect house. Roofs still leaked. Servants still quarrelled. Accounts still resisted addition when the weather was bad and the sheep were worse. Order was not a finish one reached. It was a tension renewed each morning. Eleanor had lasted more than 30 days because she had never tried merely to endure them. She had asked what the house required, taught its people to answer one another, and required its master to become part of the answer. Nathaniel had once believed the highest proof of command was that no one dared direct him. By summer, he knew better. The strongest house was not the one that waited upon a single voice. It was the one in which truth could travel from the lowest room to the highest without losing its name. The bells of Ravensmere rang across the court, clear and properly answered. And the Duke went where Eleanor told him he was needed.